Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. Here's what taxpayers need to know about higher education tax credits. Tax tip 2021-106, July 22nd, 2021. As a new school year approaches, students are considering what classes they need to take and how much the classes will cost. Whether it's community college, a trade school, a four-year university, or an advanced degree, higher education is expensive. Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. Here's what taxpayers need to know about higher education tax credits. Tax tip 2021-106, July 22nd, 2021. As a new school year approaches, students are considering what classes they need to take and how much the classes will cost. Whether it's community college, a trade school, a four-year university, or an advanced degree, higher education is expensive. The good news is tax credits can help offset these costs. So these credits reduce the amount of taxes someone owes. If the credit reduces tax to less than zero, the taxpayer could even receive a refund. Now, these credits can be a little bit confusing because there's often like different places where you can take these type of expenses and get a tax benefit for them. Remember that when you're thinking about expenses or deductions versus credits, the credits are usually the better option. So if you have the ability to take the credit, if it was a dollar for dollar thing, meaning $1 of expenses versus $1 of credits, you'd rather have the $1 of credit because that's going to be a dollar for dollar money back, whereas a dollar deduction for expenses would be subject to basically your income tax rate, meaning if you're paying like 15%, you would think you'd get something like 15% of the dollar benefit. So the credit is typically going to be the one that will be much better. The other big term these days is whether something is refundable or not. And refundable basically means that it can take your tax liability past zero, resulting in what they call, quote, a refund, end quote, even though it's going past, the liability being zero. In other words, it's not technically a refund if you're not getting refunded money that you gave to the IRS. The idea of an income tax is that they take your money through your wages, and if they take too much, they give some of it back in the format of a refund. These kind of benefit programs are now being tied into the tax program so that you'll actually get money even though you're actually technically not paying any taxes, which means it's not really a tax at that point. It's more like they're using the tax code for a benefit program. But it's key to know that, because then you might still want to make sure to file your tax return even if you didn't, because you still might get access to these refundable type of tax credits. Okay. So the taxpayer who pay for higher education in 2021 can see these tax savings when they file their tax return next year. If taxpayers, their spouses, or their dependents take a post-high school coursework, they may be eligible for a tax benefit. There are 2 credits available to help taxpayers save money on higher education. There's links to that 2 credit. There's the American Opportunity Tax Credit and the Lifetime Learning Credit. There's links to those 2 items here. Taxpayers use Form 8863 education credits to claim the credits. Now, this is the other thing that's a little bit confusing with these kind of credits, with these education expenses. You got these education expenses, you're paying for the higher education, you're saying, I think I get a benefit from this. First of all, if I can get a credit versus a deduction or something like that, then normally you would want something like the credit. And then when you look at the credit, they've got these 2 credits, which is the American Opportunity Tax Credit and the Lifetime Learning Credit, which are 2 kind of different credits, but the way they're working is they're kind of tied together in some ways. In other words, one of them will typically result in a bigger benefit, but has more limitations. So the idea being that you can't usually take 2 of them for the same expenses generally. You're typically going to say, can I get the first one, which I would get the higher dollar amount, typically the bigger tax benefit, and if not, then I will default to the second one. And when you look at the worksheets and the forms, they kind of tie these 2 credits together, even though they're technically basically different credits. So in other words, bottom line, you've got your tax benefits for these education expenses. You're typically going to want to go for the credit generally because those are going to be higher than any potential deductions you might be able to take with them usually. And then you're going to see whether or not you can get the bigger of the 2 credits. And if not, you default to the smaller of the 2 credits, and most of the worksheets will be set up and designed to do that, as opposed to thinking that you can take those same expenses and basically apply them to multiple credits, right? You can't generally do that. You gotta pick one or the other, and obviously that would mean that you would want to pick the one that benefits you most for taxes. So here are some important things taxpayers should know about these credits. The American Opportunity Tax Credit is worth a maximum benefit of up to $2,500 per eligible student, only for the first 4 years at an eligible college or vocational school. So there's the limitation. This is the one that's the bigger one. So when you're looking at these two credits, you're going to say, do I get the American Opportunity Tax Credit? Because that's going to be worth more up to the $2,500, but it's limited to the first 4 years of school. So, if you've been going to college for the last 24 years or something like that, you're like, well, I'm on year 24 here. You probably passed the first 4 years at the eligible school, and you may not get this one, but you might go to the next one then. You're a student pursuing a degree or other recognized education credential. So you're pursuing a degree, partially refundable. People could get up to $1,000 back. So the refundable portion, meaning the amount that you would still get, even if your tax liability possibly was like zero, you could still get, a benefit of the $1,000. In other words, usually, if you're looking at a credit, the credit's not going to mean that the government pays you, right? It's only going to bring your tax liability down to zero, so you don't owe any taxes, because taxes by definition usually mean that you either owe taxes or not. But because it's a benefit program, the $1,000 could go beyond that 0 point threshold, and you could still get money even if you're not paying anything in. So the lifetime learning credit is worth a maximum benefit of up to $2,000 per tax return. So this is the second one. So if you're saying, okay, this is my 24th year of college and I don't qualify for the American Opportunity Tax Credit, but maybe I can do this one here, right? So it's worth a little bit, it's worth less. It's worth $2,000 per tax return per year, possibly. That's the maximum, no matter how many students qualify, and that's for no matter how many students. So once again, worth a maximum benefit of up to $2,000 per tax return per year, no matter how many students qualify, available for all years of post-secondary education and for courses to acquire or improve job skills. Much broader of a spectrum there for the qualification. So available for an unlimited number of tax years as well. Again, much broader of a qualification. So to be eligible to claim either of these credits, a taxpayer or dependent must have received a Form 1098-T from an eligible educational institution. There are exceptions for some students. So generally, you're going to get this 1098-T. So the 1098 is not a 1099, because a 1099 usually means that you have to include income on your taxes, right? A 1098 of some kind is an informational form that says that might get some benefit. Generally, in this case, you're going to get possibly some benefit. So the school then should send you the 1098, which would include the amount that you paid for the education expenses. Now, generally, for the most case, hopefully that'll give you, the amount that you can then determine as to how much you paid for your credit calculation. So there's the 1098-T. You should get that. If you don't get that from the institution, you want to probably contact the institution about it. So taxpayers can use the Interactive Tax Assistant tool on irs.gov to find out if they're eligible for these credits. So more information can be found on the links below. We got the Compare Education Credits, and we have the Publication 970 Tax Benefits for Education. There's links to those items here. There'll be a link to this in the description.